much you remember.
I remember quite a bit about Okinawa. I have memories of Okinawa that I can't erase. I know that we landed on Okinawa on Easter Sunday and April Fool's Day. It fell that way, that particular year, 1945. And what was supposed to be our objective to take a Yantan airfield in 3 days, we took it in less than 3 hours because the Japanese general on the island got fooled, and the 2nd Marine Division was down on the southern end of the island for about a week or better and was faking landings, like as if they were coming in ashore, and that's where the landing spot was. So he pulled all his troops down to the southern end of the island. And when we went ashore on April Fool's Day, it was a real April Fool joke. There was no resistance, not until we ran into the 90,000 that he kept up on a mountain, Mount Yutaki. There are 90,000 troops up there. And then we ran into hell. And then once we secured the northern end, they put us on trucks and got into the battle down the southern end. I remember I saw Okinawans removing corpses. And there was one young kid that reminded me of my kid brother, Joey, and I started bawling like crazy. We're on a truck heading south, so I had to hide myself from the rest of the guys. I didn't want them to see me crying, but it hit right here. It was the first time I got really homesick. But then once we got into combat down south, it was, you don't think about that. You don't think about anything. Just staying alive.
You can't think about anything, I'm sure.
No, that's why I joined the Marine Corps. The training I got in the Marines, I could not have gotten in the Navy or the Army, and they wouldn't have been in the same situation as the Marines are in. But the training I got was kill or be killed. And I was a good Marine. I got to tell you that. Anyway.
Is it difficult to talk about?
No.
No.
No, I never talk about it with my family. I haven't done that. I haven't discussed any of my experiences, and I don't particularly like to. There are some fun things that we had that I share with them, and they get a kick out of it. I was a radio operator, and I had a Navajo Indian assigned to me. They're one of the wind talkers. I don't know if you heard about them. Mm-hmm. They would transmit my message in Navajo language to another Indian at the other receiving end. And he would tell the radio operator there what the message was. And we used to drive the Japanese nuts. I mean, they captured a couple of radio men purposely so they can jam our radios or listen in on our messages. And there's a radio man with every company, every combat company and there's 3 combat companies to a regiment. And there were 3 regiments in the division. So that's multiplied 3 times. And that part of it was fun. We used to call this guy Charlie Two Shoes. Of course, the Indians didn't wear shoes too often, but they saved us. They saved our lives many occasions with their translation.
Was that used during Okinawa as well?
Yeah, well, it was used throughout the Pacific, but we used it heavily on Okinawa.
What do you want 70 years later, you know? Can you believe it's been 70 years?
No, I can't.
And you remember it so vividly.
Yeah, well, those kind of thoughts don't leave your mind. I also just had my 75th high school reunion, which we did it up Brown. We have one every 5 years, ever since we got out of, all of us got out of the service. And we had a big class, but that's not to do with Okinawa, so I won't go there, because that was a story in itself.
But I bet a lot of them are veterans too.
Oh yeah, yeah, a lot of veterans.
A lot of World War II veterans?
Yeah, oh yeah. They're all old fogies like me, from the greatest generation, thanks to Tom Brokaw. But we left. I'll never forget, at the time in Hill House, they had fraternities. And I belonged to this one fraternity, and it was our last meeting, and a bunch of us were in the back of the room while we let the juniors take over. And we're talking about the war, because that's all everybody ever talked about, was the fact that the Japs had attacked Pearl Harbor, and it was a horrific thing. And we ended up with this group in the back of the room. We're all making a pact, as fraternity brothers would do. We're all gonna join the Marines tomorrow morning, okay? A few months later, I'm on the train going to Paris Island, and here are these bimbos waving goodbye to me. They never joined. The only one that joined was Art Bondi, that kid in there. He joined the Marines. The rest of them, they phonied out.
What happened to Art?
Art is, well, he's still alive, but unfortunately he lost a leg due to diabetes. He lives out in California. But he was a good kid. He's a good guy.
And you were in Japan with him?
No, I was on Guam with him.
Guam, right.
Yeah, he looked up my outfit and found out that we were there, so he came over, and I had a good family friend who was a captain in the 20th Air Force that was stationed on Guam, and he came in one night, I'll never forget it, had this guy from Virginia, his name was Junior Mudisball, a real Virginia Southerner. And he's, Pegnataro, where are you? Where are you sleeping, chicken? And I said, right here. I was sound asleep. He comes into the tent with this friend of the family who was a captain, and he's wearing captain's bars. I almost went through the mosquito net that I was sleeping in. Oh, sir, I didn't recognize him at first. Yes, sir. He didn't say officer on deck. Anyway, I met Al, and he went down to my company officer and got permission for me to join him. And we went to the officers club, and I went with another good buddy of mine, Bobby Wallach, who's since passed away. And we were in the officers club at the 20th Air Force Base, and they were all over us. We had colonels and majors, brigadier generals. They were all over us. They wanted to buy us a drink. They wanted to know what combat was like on the ground, because they were up in the air, you know. And what can we tell them? The blood and guts. It's the way it is. But we got back. It was pouring rain. Al gives me his raincoat. I was drunk as a skunk. This isn't one.
I'll sell that part back to you.
Huh?
I'll
Yeah.
sell that part back to you.
Yeah,
Oh.
we're recording.
Oh, well, you don't want to edit this out.
Oh, that's fine.
And they take me back to my 6th Division headquarters, billeting area, and they throw me into bed, in a bunk. And next morning, the reveille blows. They didn't care where you were last night. And I didn't get up, so the guys, my tent mates, picked me up. I still had the raincoat on. And they hoist me up and they marched me down to reveille, and they're holding me up on boats. I was gone. I mean, I was just a kid. I didn't drink that much.
How old were you?
At this time,
Well, just when you joined, and then how long did you serve?
well, I joined when I was 17, and I served until I was 21.
That's a long
I was
time.
21 years old when I got out. But at any rate, they're holding me up, and the gunny sergeant is calling roll call, and he comes up to me, and I didn't answer him. Pegnataro, I didn't answer. I mean, I couldn't. He comes up to me, oh, excuse me, Captain, sir. Take him back to the tent and let him sleep it off. But that was a funny incident that we had. The guys were good.
Were you in Japan? I mean, you went to Guam, but how long did you serve in Japan for?
We were there. Well, I wasn't in Japan, Maine. I'm mainly in Japan. I was on the Ryukyu Islands, which is Okinawa, which is part of the Japan mainland. We were there for 87 days. We were on the front lines for 82 out of the 87 days in combat. And there were 1st Marine Division and the 77th Army Division, plus the 6th. But they called us into combat for 82 days.
That must have been the longest 82 days of your life.
It was. It really was. I couldn't wait to. Not only that, the worst thing, being on that island, we were in a position. We were on a ridge of a hill, and we're looking out, and the sea is loaded with ships. The Bay of Naha was just, you could walk across for the number of ships that were out there, battle wagons, aircraft carriers, destroyers. and the Japanese planes were coming in, and they would get shot, and they would fly right into the ship. They would. I think you must have heard of it.
I heard that there were somewhere over 1,100
Sailors.
kamikaze
Yeah.
at this one battle.
Yeah.
So they must have been in the air all the time.
Yeah, they just flew down. They flew through shelling and whatever the Navy threw up at them, and they just flew through that and boom, right down the funnel if they had to, right into the midship, killing thousands of sailors and sinking thousands of ships, hundreds of ships.
And where were you during all this?
We were on a ridge getting ready to move out. We just finished off Sugarloaf Hill, which took us about 2 weeks to secure. The Japs were so entrenched in there. And we used to, when we were moving our lines up, a lot of guys would dig foxholes. We found on Okinawa, their cemetery were tombs that had like a patio in the front with a wall and to protect them. And we would go into the tomb and sleep in there just 1 or 2 nights. And this one guy from Bridgeport, Sid Ham, he was deathly afraid of snakes and rats. And he was laid out on a concrete bench, and he was sound asleep. All of a sudden we hear this blood-curdling scream. And he was a big guy. He was about as big as Ken is. He lets out this scream, and this snake is crawling up across his body. And there are venomous snakes on Okinawa. And the sergeant that was with us just jumped on him and covered up his mouth, told him to shut up, you'll give our position away. Because Japs were out there in front of us. But he was deathly afraid of rats and snakes. And he didn't like anybody to wake him up. When we were on Guadalcanal forming the 6th Division, Sid would lay, he's sound asleep, and Reveille sounded. He's sound asleep. So one of the guys says, Peg, wake him up. I said, I'm not waking him up. You wake him up. No, I'm not waking him up. Because once when a guy tried to wake him up, he hauled off. The first thing he did was deck him. He was just a nervous Norvis. I don't know whatever happened to him. Yeah. They put us in reserve position, and we're on one of these tombs, and the Okinawas had jars with all their family cremation, and we see a column of Marines going down where we just came out of. And I recognize this one guy, Greek Karakitsos, in the column, who was also a radio man. And I noticed his pant leg was all bloodied. I said, Greek, hey, Greek, where'd you get hit? He said, I didn't get hit. I said, what's all that blood on your pants? A sniper had hit him. He didn't even know. It went right through his leg and out the other side. and he never even realized it. So,
Is that because of adrenaline, you think?
what's that?
It's probably because of adrenaline.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, sure. The next thing you know, he's down on his knees and he's hollering, "Corman, Corman!" The corpsman got to him and he put a sulfur drug on him and wrapped him up, and he continued on with his group.
Is there anything that you want people to know about Okinawa?
Well, it was the last major battle of the Pacific. There were more people killed on Okinawa than any other island that we ever had. There was Okinawans, Japanese, and Marines, and soldiers that were killed. There was a three-star general that was killed on the front lines, General Buckner. It was an Army general. There were thousands of guys that were wounded and killed. It was the bloodiest battle of the Pacific.
Did you lose some friends?
Yeah. Yeah, there were a couple of guys that I pray for every night. And I hope they come down to visit me sometimes.
Do you feel lucky that you were able to escape?
Stephanie, you have no idea how lucky I feel and am. Because throughout my whole experience, I was overseas for 34 months. We were in skirmishes here and there, but Okinawa was the big battle. My guardian angel was on my shoulder, and I came home safe and sound. And I see these guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq with one leg, both legs blown off, or an arm, and my heart goes out to them. I could start crying over them. That, to me, is the greatest sacrifice, more so than if a guy is killed, he's buried, he's gone. But this guy has to live with this thing for the rest of his life. That to me tears up my heart, really does.
Do you think a lot of people from your generation suffered from post-traumatic stress and no one talked about it?
I don't know. I don't ever remember anybody, with the exception of one guy who became an alcoholic. But other than that, there was not around. Not like it is for these guys coming back from Vietnam, the guys coming back from Pakistan, Afghanistan, and all that. If I were in the Marines today and they sent me to Afghanistan and deployed me and then sent me home, and I was married to Honey, they'd have an awful time getting me back to go back for a second deployment. I would go AWOL. I would go AWOL, I swear. I don't know how these kids are doing it. I don't know what motivates them, unless they're paying them extra bonuses to go back. I wouldn't do it. It was a different kind of war altogether.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Actually, there is one more question I had. And actually, this is something that would probably compare to Afghanistan or Iraq. Something that you faced on that island was not just the constant bombings and the constant kamikazes and this huge Japanese force, but you were fighting against Okinawan civilians that were pressed into service. What was it about? What was it like for you having to fight civilians?
Well, we couldn't identify them that well. due to the Japanese moving in on them. We had an incident where there was about 100 Okinawans in a cave, and some of them were men and women, women and children, and the Japanese wouldn't let them get out. Our interpreter was killed, and they asked me if there was anybody here that speaks. They asked our outfit, anyone speaks Spanish? And I had Spanish in high school, but I couldn't speak it. But I mixed it up with Italian, and I tried to get to the civilian population that was in there that we would not rape the women and kill the old men. We're waiting to take you out. And it was their own Okinawans that wouldn't let them come out of the cave. They said no, they were safer there. Finally, the commander, the colonel, called for a flamethrower, which killed me to see it. A tank comes rolling up, and he aims the muzzle of his turret into the cave, and he gives a burst of fire, flamethrower. And luckily he stopped, because that's all it took was just that. And they came out. Some were burned, some weren't. Most of them weren't. But we were able to get those people out of there.
All civilians.
All civilians.
Women.
Yeah, women, children, older people. That I didn't like. There was a time that I think, did I say this about when we were moving? Yeah, I think I did. We were moving from the north end down south, and I saw this young kid, like my kid brother, yeah.